Dr. Amanda Reynolds pressed her hand against the crystalline wall, feeling the subtle vibration beneath her fingertips. The massive structure, iridescent and otherworldly, rose from the Siberian permafrost, like a cathedral built by giants. 3 weeks had passed since the mining operation had struck something that shouldn't exist, and she still couldn't believe what they'd found. Any changes in the resonance patterns? Dr. Marcus Webb asked from his monitoring station, his eyes fixed on the holographic displays that surrounded him like a cocoon of light. "It's responding to everything," Amanda replied, her voice filled with wonder. "Even our heartbeats." She pulled out her phone and played a simple scale. The crystal pulsed in response, each note creating ripples of blue light that danced through its structure. The underground chamber they'd excavated was massive, large enough to house several football fields, but the crystal structure dominated everything. Its spires reached toward the reinforced ceiling, while its base plunged deep into the earth, far beyond their current excavation depth. Amanda's team had been chosen for their unique combination of skills: xenorchaeology, music theory, and advanced physics. But after 3 weeks of study, they were still no closer to understanding why this ancient structure responded so perfectly to human musical scales. "Look at this," called out Dr. Jessica Martinez from her station. "I've been analyzing the resonance patterns against our musical database. The crystal doesn't just respond to modern music. It matches everything: ancient Greek modes, traditional Chinese scales, African polyrhythms, even microtonal systems from India. It's like it was built with human music in mind." Amanda was about to respond when the crystal suddenly pulsed with a deep red light. The ground trembled, and every screen in the facility went dark. "Emergency power," Marcus shouted, but before anyone could move, the screens came back online. Every display showed the same image, a message being broadcast globally. The alien face that filled the screens was unsettling in its almost human features. Its eyes were too large, its skin a pale purple, but it was the complete lack of expression that sent chills down Amanda's spine. "People of Earth," the being spoke in perfect English, its voice synthesized from countless radio and television broadcasts. "We are the hegemony. Your world has been identified as a Level 3 civilization with potential for disruption. You will submit to integration within our collective or face immediate pacification. You have 48 hours to surrender your governing authority." The message repeated in different languages, but Amanda barely noticed. The crystal was reacting to the alien voice, but not with its usual harmonious patterns. Instead, it created sharp, jagged lines of energy that seemed almost defensive. Dr. Reynolds, one of the junior researchers, called out, "The crystal's internal temperature is rising. These energy patterns, they're unlike anything we've recorded." Amanda rushed to the main analysis station, her mind racing. The crystal's reaction to the hegemony's message couldn't be coincidence. As she studied the new data, a pattern emerged that made her blood run cold. "It's not just responding to the message," she whispered. "It's analyzing it. Look at these energy signatures. They're trying to match the hegemony's transmission frequencies, but in musical terms." She pointed to a particular pattern. "This is a counterpoint, a musical response to their signal." The crystal's glow intensified, and deep within its structure, something began to move. Layers that had appeared solid were shifting, revealing complex mechanisms that had lain dormant for millennia. "Call the military," Amanda ordered, her voice steady despite the fear and excitement coursing through her. "And get me every orchestra, every music school, every composer we can find. I don't think this is just an artifact. It's a weapon, and we've just found out why it was built." As if in response to her words, the crystal emitted a single, pure note that shook the entire chamber. It was a sound that carried both warning and promise, Earth's first note in a symphony that would change the galaxy forever. "Everyone down," Amanda shouted as another surge of energy pulsed through the crystal chamber. The facility's lights flickered, and equipment sparked with uncontrolled power. 20 hours had passed since the Hegemony's ultimatum, and they were running out of time. James Cooper, the night shift janitor, stood frozen in the doorway, his cleaning cart forgotten behind him. He'd been whistling an old jazz tune when the crystal had suddenly erupted with brilliant purple light, creating patterns they'd never seen before. "Do it again," Amanda said, her eyes wide with realization. "The song you were just whistling, please." James looked uncertain, but began to whistle "Take the A Train." The crystal's response was immediate. Energy spiraled through its structure in perfect synchronization with the melody, creating a visual symphony of light and color. "It's not just responding," Dr. Martins said, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "Look at these energy readings. The crystal is amplifying the music, converting it into some kind of defensive matrix." Military personnel crowded the observation deck above, their faces illuminated by the crystal's glow. General Sarah Blackwood, who'd arrived hours after the Hegemony's message, leaned forward with intense interest. "Dr. Reynolds," the general's voice crackled over the intercom. "Explain what we're seeing." Amanda grabbed a tablet and began pulling up comparative scans. The crystal isn't just a musical instrument or a communication device. It's part of a weapons system. The Harmonious must have built these as a defense network. She projected a global map showing similar energy signatures at various points around the world. "And ours isn't the only one." "More crystals?" General Blackwood asked. "All dormant until now," Amanda replied. "But they're waking up. Each one is positioned near a major population center. I think they were waiting for us to find them." In the center of the chamber, James had started humming along with his whistling. The crystal's response intensified, creating complex geometric patterns that seemed to extend beyond three-dimensional space. Dr. Webb rushed over with new readings. The energy output just doubled. "It's not just the melody, it's the harmony. The crystal responds more strongly to complex musical structures." "General," Amanda called out, her voice urgent, "I need every concert hall, every music venue within range of a crystal site. We need musicians, and we need them now. You want to turn our cultural centers into weapon platforms?" the general asked, skepticism clear in her voice. The Hegemony's message showed no understanding of musical structure or artistic expression, Amanda explained. Their language was perfect, but emotionless. "I think the Harmonious created these crystals as a defense against exactly this kind of threat, species that had lost their connection to art and music." The crystal suddenly emitted a deep, resonant tone that shook the entire facility. On every screen, a new signal appeared. The Hegemony fleet had been detected entering the solar system. "Time's up," General Blackwood announced. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now." Amanda turned to James, who was still standing by his cart. "You just helped us unlock an ancient alien defense system with Duke Ellington. How do you feel about joining Project Symphony?" A slow smile spread across his face. "Does this mean I get to keep whistling at work?" Before she could answer, the crystal released another pulse of energy, this one forming into a holographic display. Complex musical notations, unlike any Earth system, but somehow instantly recognizable to Amanda, filled the air. "It's sheet music," she breathed. "The Harmonious left us their symphony. We just need to learn how to play it." Above them, General Blackwood was already on her phone, issuing orders. Within hours, every major orchestra on Earth would be mobilized. Every concert hall converted into a defense station. The race to save humanity had become a quest to create the greatest performance in human history. And somewhere in the void between stars, the Hegemony fleet approached, unaware that Earth's greatest weapon had always been its music. Times Square had never been so quiet. The usual chaos of New York City had been replaced by an eerie stillness as the New York Philharmonic Orchestra set up their instruments beneath the towering digital billboards. Above them, the hegemony's first wave of ships cast massive shadows across the city, their hulls reflecting the morning sun like polished obsidian. Amanda stood behind the orchestra, her eyes fixed on the crystal shard they'd transported from Siberia. Similar shards had been distributed to major cities worldwide, each one connected to the main crystal network. The question was, would it be enough? Energy signatures from the enemy ships are spiking. Dr. Webb's voice crackled through her earpiece. They're charging weapons. Conductor Michael Chen raised his baton, and the orchestra members lifted their instruments. The air was electric with tension as the first notes of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony filled the square. The crystal shard began to pulse in time with the music, its glow intensifying with each measure. The hegemony struck first. A beam of intense energy lanced down from the nearest ship, only to be met by an invisible barrier of pure sound. The impact created a visual display of music made manifest, notes and rhythms transformed into shields of pure energy. It's working, Amanda shouted over the symphony, the crystals converting the musical energy into a defense screen. Keep playing. Around the world, similar scenes were unfolding. In London, the Royal Orchestra performed Holst's The Planets as hegemony ships tried to breach their defenses. In Tokyo, a mixture of traditional taiko drums and modern electronic music created patterns that confused and disrupted enemy targeting systems. Back in Times Square, the orchestra had reached the famous da-da-da-dum of Beethoven's Fifth. The crystal shard pulsed with each note, and the shield above the city grew stronger. When three hegemony ships concentrated their fire on a single point, the music swelled in response, the musicians playing with an intensity born of desperation and defiance. Multiple contacts. Webb warned. They're trying to surround the city. Amanda grabbed her phone and connected to the emergency broadcast system. This is Dr. Reynolds. All musicians, professional or amateur, we need you in the streets now. Play anything. Play everything. The response was immediate. Street performers emerged from subway stations, their music joining the symphony. Church bells began to ring, their tones adding new layers to the defense. A gospel choir in Harlem added their voices, and a jazz band in Greenwich Village joined in, each new source of music strengthening the shield. The hegemony ships began to show signs of confusion. Their perfect formation faltered as they encountered something their advanced technology couldn't comprehend. The raw, emotional power of human music. Energy readings from their fleet are fluctuating, Webb reported. Whatever we're doing, it's affecting their systems. But victory wasn't assured. As the orchestra reached the end of the first movement, Amanda noticed the crystal shard's light beginning to flicker. They couldn't maintain this level of energy forever. Then she saw it. A pattern in the crystal's pulses that matched notes in the harmonious sheet music they'd discovered. Conductor Chen. She called out, "We need to modify the piece. Fourth measure, third movement. Add a counter melody in the strings." The conductor nodded, quickly relaying instructions to his musicians, as they began to incorporate the alien notes into Beethoven's symphony. The effect was dramatic. The crystal's power surged, and the shield above New York changed from invisible waves to a visible aurora of sound and light. The hegemony ships began to retreat, their perfect formation completely broken. Around the world, similar reports came in. The aliens were withdrawing, unable to counter this unprecedented form of defense. But as the music faded and the celebrations began, Amanda stared at the crystal shard with growing concern. In its depths, she could see new patterns forming. Patterns that suggested the Harmonious had faced this enemy before, and if she was reading them correctly, this was only the beginning. The first battle had been won, but the Symphony of War had only completed its opening movement. The fallen hegemony ship stretched across the Nevada desert like a broken musical note, its hull still smoking from the impact. Amanda studied the massive structure through the window of the military transport helicopter as they descended. This was their first chance to examine the enemy's technology up close, and she wasn't going to waste it. "Remember," General Blackwood said, checking her tactical display, "you have 20 minutes before the recovery teams might arrive. The crystal shield around the site won't hold them off forever." Amanda nodded, adjusting her protective suit. Dr. Webb and 3 Special Forces operators would accompany her inside. The ship had been disabled during the battle by a combined performance of classical Chinese music and Native American flutes, a combination that had created an unexpected resonance pattern in the crystal network. They entered through a breach in the hull, their helmet lights illuminating the strange interior. The ship's corridors were perfectly geometric, every angle precise, every surface mathematically perfect. There was no art, no decoration, no sign of individual expression anywhere. "Look at this," Webb called out, his light falling on a bank of controls. Everything's based on pure mathematical sequences, no irregular patterns, no artistic design elements at all. Amanda approached a terminal that still had power. The alien text scrolling across its screen began to translate itself, another sign of the hegemony's advanced technology. What she read made her blood run cold. "They're not just conquerors," she whispered. "They're cultural exterminators. Listen to this. Species Integration Protocol 7. All forms of non-essential sound production must be eliminated. Emotional expression through organized noise patterns creates inefficiency and chaos." She scrolled further, her horror growing. "They've done this to dozens of civilizations. Erased their music, their art, their dance, everything that makes a culture unique. They call it optimization." A sudden sound made everyone freeze. From deeper within the ship came a faint, rhythmic tapping. The Special Forces team raised their weapons, but Amanda held up her hand. The pattern was familiar. "That's Morse code," she said, following the sound. But how would they know? They found the source in what appeared to be a holding cell. A creature that looked almost like a tall, graceful insect was tapping its limb against the wall. When it saw them, it stopped, then deliberately tapped out, "HELP." It's not part of the hegemony, Webb realized. It's a prisoner. The alien began tapping faster, and Amanda translated. "Music. You have music. We remember. We were artists once." "How many species have they enslaved?" one of the operators asked. Before anyone could answer, the ship's emergency systems activated. Red light flooded the corridors, and a pulsing alarm began to sound. But something was wrong with the alarm. It had a pattern, a almost musical quality that seemed to fight against its own mechanical nature. "The ship's systems are fighting themselves," Webb said, checking his scanner. "Look at these code patterns. Part of their technology is trying to express itself musically, but their control systems are suppressing it." Amanda's mind raced. "That's why they're really here. They're not just afraid of our music. They're afraid their own people will remember how to make it." She turned to the imprisoned alien. "We'll come back for you, all of you." "Dr. Reynolds," Webb called out urgently, "the ship's core is showing massive energy fluctuations. I think it's trying to sing." The entire structure groaned, metal stress points creating unintended harmonies. The perfect geometric patterns began to waver as something older, something more primal, fought to break through. "Everyone out," General Blackwood ordered through their comms. Hegemony reinforcements approaching. As they sprinted back through the corridors, Amanda's mind was already racing ahead. The hegemony hadn't just suppressed music. They'd trapped it, bound it within their own technology. And now that prison was starting to break. They'd reached the extraction point, just as the first enemy ships appeared on the horizon. But Amanda barely noticed them. She'd found what they needed, not just a way to fight the hegemony, but a way to free them from their self-imposed silence. The real war wouldn't be won with weapons, but with a song of liberation that had been waiting millennia to be heard. The Crystal Control Center, formerly the Sydney Opera House, hummed with frantic energy as holographic displays showed the approaching hegemony armada. Amanda studied the massive fleet's formation. This time, their ships were arranged in a pattern that seemed to cancel out simple musical frequencies. "They've adapted to our basic patterns," she announced to the assembled military and musical leaders. "Single-style performances won't work anymore. We need something more complex." On the main stage, an unlikely group had gathered. The Sydney Symphony Orchestra shared space with Aboriginal musicians, a Korean pop group, and a renowned jazz quartet. Above them, the Crystal Network's primary node pulsed with anticipation. First contact in 5 minutes. General Blackwood's voice crackled through the speakers. "Whatever you're planning, Dr. Reynolds, do it fast." Amanda touched her earpiece, connecting to the Global Defense Network. "All stations, initiate protocol fusion. Remember what we practiced. Don't fight the chaos. Embrace it." The first hegemony attack came like a thunderbolt. Energy weapons designed to match Earth's musical frequencies struck the shield over Sydney. For a moment, the defense wavered. Then the music began. The symphony orchestra started with Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, its primitive, chaotic energy building a base. Aboriginal didgeridoos and clapsticks joined in, their ancient rhythms weaving through the classical piece. The Crystal's response was immediate. It's like show dancing with new, unpredictable patterns. Energy shield holding at 60%. Webb called out. But they're adjusting their attack pattern. Now, Amanda signaled to the K-pop group, who launched into their most popular song, their modern electronic beats and harmonies adding another layer of complexity. The jazz quartet followed, improvising around the merged melodies, creating something that had never existed before. Around the world, similar scenes played out. In Rio de Janeiro, samba met classical piano. In Cairo, ancient Egyptian scales blended with electronic music. In New Orleans, blues guitar merged with Gregorian chants. The hegemony ships faltered, their perfect formation breaking, as they encountered sound patterns too complex and emotional to counter. But victory wasn't assured. The Crystal Network was starting to show signs of strain, its light flickering under the immense energy load. Dr. Reynolds, a junior researcher, called out, "The network's core temperature is rising. We're pushing it beyond its design limits." Amanda rushed to the monitoring station, her mind racing. The crystals were more than just technology. They were art made manifest. And like any great art, they needed room to breathe. "All stations," she broadcast, "stop trying to control the music. Let it flow naturally. The crystals don't just amplify our music. They dance with it." The effect was transformative. As musicians worldwide stopped forcing their combinations and started truly listening to each other, the Crystal Network's light stabilized. The music became something more than a weapon. It became a conversation between cultures, between past and present, between Earth and the stars themselves. High above Sydney, the hegemony fleet's perfect geometry shattered. Ships spun out of formation, their crews unable to process the pure creative energy being directed at them. Some began to retreat, while others seemed to move almost drunkenly, as if dancing to the music they'd been programmed to resist. But in the midst of their apparent victory, Amanda noticed something troubling in the crystal's core display. Deep within its structure, new patterns were forming. Patterns that matched the ancient musical score they'd discovered in Siberia. "The network's trying to tell us something," she muttered, studying the complex harmonies. "This isn't just about defense anymore. The Harmonious left us a message in their symphony, and we're finally ready to hear it. As the battle raged on, the crystal's light began to pulse in a new rhythm, one that seemed to reach beyond Earth's atmosphere, beyond the hegemony fleet, towards something waiting in the deep between the stars. The music of Earth had proven its power, but the final movement of this cosmic symphony was still waiting to be played. Deep within the crystal chamber in Siberia, Amanda stood before a holographic display that stretched from floor to ceiling. The ancient musical score of the Harmonious rotated slowly before her, its notes shifting and changing like living things. Dr. Webb and James Cooper worked at nearby stations, racing against time as reports of the approaching hegemony superfleet continued to pour in. "Look at this section here," James said, his years of jazz experience giving him a unique perspective. "The way these phrases connect, it's like they're having a conversation with empty space." Amanda nodded, her eyes fixed on the pattern. "It's not just music. It's a key to something bigger." She gestured at a sequence that seemed to fold in on itself. "These aren't just notes. They're coordinates. Frequencies." The Harmonious weren't just writing music. They were mapping reality itself. The crystal pulsed in response to their discussion, its light creating shadows that danced across the chamber. Each pulse seemed to reveal new layers in the score, like pages of a book finally being turned. "Energy spike," Webb called out from his station, the crystals responding to something in the lower archives. They rushed to the lower levels, where the crystal's root structure disappeared into the earth. A section of the wall had become transparent, revealing a hidden chamber they'd never seen before. Inside, a smaller crystal floated in midair, its surface covered in what looked like musical notation. "It's the final movement," Amanda breathed, her hand touching the chamber's surface. The piece they never finished. The small crystal rotated, revealing more of its contents. But why leave it incomplete? A holographic image appeared above the crystal, showing a being that must have been one of the Harmonious. Its form was almost musical in nature, composed of flowing lines and rhythmic patterns. The message it spoke was not in words, but in pure musical phrases that the crystal translated. "We leave this unfinished by design." The translation read, "The power to reshape reality through sound must not come from one species alone. True harmony requires many voices, many stories. We have written the framework. You must complete it with your own song." The chamber filled with light as more of the message played. But be warned, the silence seeks to spread. Those who fear the chaos of creation will try to impose their order. Your music, your art, all that makes you unique. These are not weaknesses to be overcome. They are the very forces that bind reality together. Suddenly, every alert in the facility began to sound. General Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos. "Multiple hegemony warships detected. This isn't just another fleet. They're bringing everything they have. They must know what you found." Amanda's mind raced as she studied the incomplete symphony. They're not just afraid of music. They're afraid of what it can do. The Harmonious found a way to use art to shape the very structure of spacetime and the hegemony. They want to silence it forever, James finished, his face grim. To lock reality into their perfect, unchanging pattern. Dr. Webb's hands flew over his console. If these readings are correct, this symphony could create a resonance pattern that would affect the entire galaxy. But the power requirements would be enormous. We'd need every crystal, every musician, every voice on Earth, Amanda said, her expression set with determination. Not just playing together, but creating something new. She activated the global communication network. "This is Dr. Reynolds. I need every cultural center, every concert hall, every street musician, and shower singer. What we're about to attempt has never been done before." The crystal pulsed with her words, its light now a deep, resonant blue. The holographic score expanded, showing empty measures waiting to be filled, not just with notes, but with the full expression of human creativity. "How long until the hegemony arrives?" James asked. 3 hours, General Blackwood responded. "Maybe less." Amanda looked at the incomplete symphony, then at her team. "Then we have 3 hours to write the most important piece of music in human history." Above them, the crystal network began to pulse in a new rhythm, as if the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for the song that would either save or end everything. The hegemony superfleet darkened, the skies above every major city on Earth, their ships forming a web of silent metal and shadow. In Times Square, Amanda stood before a hastily assembled command center, surrounded by screens showing similar scenes from around the world. The crystal network hummed with anticipation, its light pulsing in time with the planet's collective heartbeat. "Final check," she called out through the global link. "Sydney. Aboriginal elders are in position with the Symphony Orchestra," came the response. "Traditional songlines are ready to join the harmony." Beijing. Ancient bells of the Forbidden City are prepared. Modern electronic artists standing by. Cairo. Ancient Egyptian scales combined with contemporary Middle Eastern orchestra. Ready. One by one, every major cultural center reported in. But it wasn't just the professional musicians. Streets, homes, and public spaces worldwide were filled with people clutching instruments or preparing to sing. The harmonious final symphony would be completed not by a select few, but by all of humanity. Energy readings from the fleet are off the charts, Dr. Webb reported from his station. "They're charging something massive, some kind of silencing field." Amanda looked up at the looming ships, then back at the crystal shard pulsing before her. "They want to end this forever, to lock reality into their perfect, silent pattern." She activated the global channel again. "Everyone, remember, this isn't about playing perfect notes. It's about telling your story, adding your voice to the symphony." In the command center, James Cooper stood ready with his jazz quartet. "Never thought I'd save the world with a song," he said with a slight smile. "Not just one song," Amanda replied. "Every song, every story, every voice." The hegemony struck first. A wave of energy rippled down from their fleet, designed to cancel all sound, all music, all expression. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, from a small church in New Orleans, a single gospel voice rose in defiance. In the mountains of Peru, an ancient flute joined in. The crystal network sparked to life, connecting these distant notes into something new. Amanda raised her hand, and the global performance began. Classical orchestras merged with rock bands, sacred chants blended with children's songs. Every lullaby, every work song, every melody that had ever carried hope or defiance or love became part of Earth's symphony. The crystal network transformed these countless voices into pure energy, creating patterns that rippled through space itself. In their ships, the hegemony crews began to experience something they'd forgotten: the memory of music. Through the crystal network sensors, Amanda watched as alien faces showed expression for the first time in generations. "The pattern," Webb shouted over the rising song. "Look at the crystal network. It's completing itself." The holographic score that had haunted them for weeks now filled with new notes, new harmonies. Humanity's music was weaving itself into the harmonious final symphony, creating something that had never existed before: a song of life, of growth, of beautiful imperfection. High above, the hegemony fleet's perfect formation began to break. Ships moved as if dancing, their crews unable to resist the pull of music they'd thought long forgotten. The silencing field wavered, then transformed, becoming part of the symphony rather than its enemy. Through the crystal network, Amanda felt every note, every voice. A mother singing to her child in Tokyo, street musicians in Rio, a boy whistling in Moscow. Each one added their own thread to the tapestry of sound that now stretched between the stars. "Look," James called out, pointing to the sky. The space between the stars had begun to shimmer, as if reality itself was responding to the music. The harmonious symphony, combined with every song Earth had ever known, was doing more than defeating the hegemony. It was awakening something that had slept since the beginning of time. Amanda stared in wonder as new patterns formed in the crystal network, patterns that suggested this was only the beginning. The final movement was about to begin, and with it, a new chapter in the history of not just Earth, but all of reality. The space between stars sang. There was no other way to describe it. As Earth's combined symphony reached its crescendo, reality itself seemed to vibrate with music. Amanda stood in the crystal chamber, watching as new patterns of light danced through the network, creating harmonies that had never existed before. Energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen, Dr. Webb reported, his voice filled with wonder. The crystal network isn't just transmitting music, it's transforming it into pure creative force. Above Earth, the hegemony fleet had ceased all hostile actions. Their ships now moved in flowing patterns that matched the music's rhythm, as if remembering a dance they'd forgotten eons ago. From their communication channels came sounds that no one had heard in centuries, the lost songs of 1,000 conquered worlds, breaking free at last. "Look at this," James called out, pointing to the holographic display. The ancient score left by the harmonious had changed. What was once incomplete now filled with new notes, new patterns, a perfect blend of their ancient knowledge and humanity's raw creativity. Suddenly, the crystal's light shifted to a deep resonant gold. A new presence filled the chamber, and Amanda gasped as shimmering forms materialized before them. The harmonious had not gone extinct. They had evolved, becoming living songs in the cosmic symphony. "You have done what we hoped." The beings communicated through pure musical phrases, not simply completing our work, but transforming it into something greater. Through the global network, everyone on Earth could see and hear this moment. The harmonious continued, their message translating into every language. "We left our symphony unfinished, because the universe needs more than one voice. True creation requires diversity, change, even discord. The hegemony sought to impose perfect order, but life thrives in beautiful chaos." On screens worldwide, images appeared of other worlds, other species beginning to remember their own songs. The hegemony's perfect silence was breaking, replaced by a galaxy-wide awakening of art and expression. The crystal network was never just a weapon, Amanda realized, speaking to both her team and the world. It was a key to understanding the true nature of reality. That creation itself is an endless song, and every voice makes it richer. The harmonious gestured, and the chamber filled with a vision of the galaxy as they saw it, not just stars and planets, but an intricate web of music, each species contributing its own unique note to the greater symphony. "We offer you a choice," they sang. "Earth has proven itself ready to join the greater song. Will you help us guide others to remember their music?" Before Amanda could respond, a new sound joined the symphony. From the hegemony ships came music they had hidden for generations, beautiful, strange harmonies that spoke of their own forgotten worlds. Their perfect geometric formations dissolved completely, replaced by flowing, artistic patterns that matched their rediscovered songs. "We remember," their leaders communicated. "We remember everything we lost in our quest for perfect order. We choose to sing again." The crystal network pulsed one final time, and Amanda felt the change ripple through reality itself. The barriers between species, between different forms of expression, began to fade. Earth's music had done more than save humanity. It had helped heal a wound in the very fabric of space and time. 3 months later, Amanda stood before the United Nations, the crystal shard glowing softly beside her. Behind her, representatives from 100 worlds, including the former hegemony, gathered for the inauguration of the Galactic Conservatory of Arts. "We stand at a new beginning," she addressed the assembly. "Our music has always been more than entertainment or art. It is the language of creation itself, a force that binds all living things together. Today, we begin teaching and learning, sharing our songs and stories across the stars." Above the assembly hall, the night sky sparkled with new light as distant worlds added their voices to the universal symphony. Humanity had not just survived, they had helped the galaxy remember how to sing.